On my QuickTime? What?
Just your Apple software. If you have a random issue the other day, if you don't update your software, what time does it work, right?
It's not?
And I definitely haven't updated nothing. But don't you get the thing that it'll tell you that you need to update it?
It says it's recording.
Oh, it is?
So. Cool. So, like I was saying, this was a talk that was the art of negotiation, getting paid what you're worth, kind of knowing your worth. And this was geared more towards women and the distinct challenges that we face when we're trying to find a job. But I also thought it'd be pertinent for people who might be more introverted, or people who might not be as comfortable with speaking highly about themselves, or might not think as highly about themselves as they should. So one of the first things that she talked about was knowing your truth. So her truth is, I stand for women. So what she does is her intention is to forever change the trajectory of the career of every woman. So part of this is getting to know what your truth is and really thinking about that and what your intention in life is, in your career search, all that stuff, really knowing who you are. So women graduating from college right now make about 90% what men make. By the time the woman is then 45, she's probably making only 45% of what men are making. So there's different factors that go into this: staying at home, caring for parents, being kind of in that caretaker role, maybe not being able to stay in the workforce. So this statistic isn't just straight across or anything, like same position, but it's just in general kind of knowing like women aren't as prevalent in the workforce, and we do have to do a little bit more in order to encourage them in this. And I would say, like before, this also ties into encouraging introverts as well. Would you like to continue?
Sure. So, really what we wanted to do as well is to remove the fear of being able to negotiate, remove the fear of being able to ask for exactly what it is that you want in the workplace, and also regarding what your salary requirements are. I know every one of us in this room is pretty nervous about receiving that first offer and seeing that number, being able to determine whether that number is fair or whether we should be asking for more. Simply because of what's happening within the market, whatever our needs are financially. So just removing the fear of what that looks like, but also being able to understand that negotiating isn't always about asking for more money. Sometimes, and oftentimes in a workplace, the non-tangible things are just as important as what you get in your paycheck, whether that be vacation days or being able to work remotely. So it's really important when thinking about what it is that you want from, your next role, what do you want that to look like? Not only financially, but how you want to be able to manage the work-life balance as well.
Yes. And part of removing this fear is this is about selling yourself. That's what negotiation is about. It's about knowing your skill set, knowing what you can do, what you specifically bring to the table, and then taking ownership of that. So it's not adversarial, which is hard for me personally. I feel like if I don't agree with what they're offering to me, I feel uncomfortable with coming back with another number, because I feel like, oh, that's what they want. Okay, I'm not gonna push it. But part of this too is that you're solving a problem together. They want you there. You want the job. Now you need to align yourself with the desires and the needs of the other person. And something that is interesting with women in particular is that we, not all of us, of course, but tend to be more about let's find the best option for everyone. Whereas men sometimes tend to be more of I need to get the best deal, right? I'm not saying this is everyone. This is not a blanket statement. This is just some of the trends. So what that ends up looking like is if someone is offering $60,000 and I want $70,000, if they're looking to get the best deal and I'm looking to make everyone happy, what ends up happening is that maybe we end at $62,000 versus the $65,000. $65,000 would make us both happy, and $62,000, I'm now sacrificing $3,000 a year because I just wanted to make everyone happy. So it's balancing that and trying to find that common ground, but also know that just because you ask for more, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Perfect. So the goal of being able to negotiate is ultimately to get exactly what it is that you want. Some of the tricks or tools needed to be able to negotiate fairly, not only for yourself but the other party, is to make sure that not only you stand by your truth in order to get what it is that you want, but then also do some research before going into the negotiations. We've all negotiated either a car with parents or with friends or with partners. You may not even recognize it as a negotiation, but we do that all the time, even with ourselves, either to get something we want, to not have to do something we don't want to do, or to delay going through whatever process it is. So what happens, one of the things to do when you're going to negotiate, specifically in a job situation, is to look your best, bring your best game. Right now, we may not feel that we do look our best. However, for women, we're often judged by how we look. That's initially kind of what happens. And the same can be said for men as well. So definitely when going in to negotiate, you want to make sure you look your best, because when you look your best, you're going to feel your best. My grandmother always said, dress up and fool the public. No matter how you feel, no matter what's going on, you always want to look your best, because then you're going to present that way. Also, make sure that you know exactly what it is that you're asking for, so that you speak to it not only with conviction, but you want to be convincing as well. If you're saying, I want to get a $10,000 per year raise because I've been able to, I show up on time, I work hard, I've been able to work on this project, I've been able to, whatever contributions you've made, you want to be able to speak to those. One of the tools that Kathleen mentioned was kind of keeping a journal, if you will, of what you're doing every day in your work or whatever it is that you're negotiating, because when you're talking to the person on the other end, you want to be able to have actual tangible results as to what you bring, so that when you're asking for this raise, or you're asking for, whatever amount you're asking for, it's justified and it's legitimate and it stands up against something. The other component is to practice. Get someone else that you can bounce these things off of, so that when it does come time to pull the trigger, you're confident, you've practiced, and you can speak to it fluidly. And the last thing before I turn it over to Liz is Kathleen mentioned that when you're asking, once you say it, once you do your ask, then stop talking. Don't say anything else. Women tend to, and I know I do personally, is try to talk and fill silence. As humans, we're uncomfortable with those awkward silences, and we feel like we have to talk to fill them up. Sometimes when you do that, you can undo everything that you just asked for. So say what it is that you want, and then stop talking and give the other person a chance to respond.
Mm-hmm. So these are all going based on 5 rules that she gave us. So like Sheila was just mentioning, rule number 1 is prepare and know everything. So that goes into this journal that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. If you can, do this daily. So you have examples of what you did, a win that you had, a situation that you helped with, or even something negative that happened that you can then speak positively to. So you have an actual Google spreadsheet or something of this. Practice. Put together your story or narrative and talk it through, have it ready. That's kind of like the intros that we've been talking about. Know who you are and know what you bring to the table and practice that. Remind yourself daily of that. Number 3 was know your walkaway point. So be clear, at what point am I willing to take an action? So if you're already in an existing job and you want to go to your boss and say hey, I think I need a $5 raise. There's good ways to present that, but know that if they're we can only give you a $2 raise, and if that's not good enough for you, you need to know what that walkaway point is. And that's the same when you're going to get a new job. If you don't want to make less than 60, that's your walkaway point. Don't make less than 60. However, there are ways that you can kind of get around that if they can't afford to give you more money. Like Sheila was mentioning earlier, there's non-monetary compensation. So it would be hey, I want to work Fridays remote. I want to leave Fridays at noon every week. I want a better PTO package, or I want an eco-pass. I want free parking. I want a car allowance. Think about things that you're willing to take in lieu of additional money, and know what that is, so that when they come back with something the lowest we can possibly do is 65, you're well, what if I got an extra 2 days of PTO a year. Maybe then you both would be happy. They're not having to actually give you more money, and you are getting another benefit from it as well. The number 5, like Shayla was talking about, is ask for what you want and then shut the fuck up. Just let it be an awkward silence. Some of the notes that I was taking on that was when you receive the offer, pause. Like they say, hey, 65. Pause. You're on the phone or something with them. Let them wait while you're thinking it through. And then say, that's not where I was hoping to end up. And they might say something like, where did you want to end up? Like, my goal is 70. Then pause and wait for them to say something again. Don't say 70, but I'd be willing to do this or willing to do this, right? Also, refrain from, if you're like, I was thinking about making 60 to 70. They're going to offer you 60 because they can get away with 60. So think about what the high end of that position is. If you know that salary range for that position is 60 to 70, maybe suggest 75. See what they say. You're not going to end up on 75 because they won't pay you that, but that at least brings the top value up so you can negotiate down from there, which is something that's very difficult for me personally. But as long as you already know that about yourself and what you want, it'll be a lot easier to be able to actually speak to it and hold to your guns.
I would say one of the things that I used to do when I was working with candidates at the hospital, I would get someone's number and then I would add $5,000 to it. I know that that's pretty rare, but I would always try to advocate for people to get the most money. Number one, I knew that the hospital could afford it. I knew that they could pay people exactly what it was that they were asking for, although they would try to undercut people. But also, I would do that because I know that a lot of times people just want jobs, right? So they're willing to take whatever is offered so that they can become gainfully employed. So one of the things that I would say to all of you, and as well as myself, is figure out what that number is for you. Each of us is going to look different. Figure out what that number is that you need to be able to pay for everything that you have, and figure in like your miscellaneous. If you want to go out to eat, if you like to go to, figure out what that looks like for you to be able to live well. Figure out that number and add $5,000 to it. Figure out what that looks like, because although companies do have a budget, they'll give you a range, 60, 70, whatever that looks like. For candidates that they really want and they really need, they can get approval to go over that number. So just because someone's on the phone telling you, this is what I have, this is what I can do, there's always room, there's built-in room to go 10% above the highest number on the range, FYI. There is built-in budgetarily to go above that number. So figure out what that number looks like for you so that you can get exactly what it is that you're worth. When we were in the meeting, I did talk about a time that I negotiated more salary for myself. I'd come in, worked my job. I was there for about a year. I was the only person there on site doing the work of 2 people. Although I had a base salary and I was getting a bonus as well, I knew that I was still underpaid compared to my counterparts doing the same job, same amount of time, maybe less education than what I'd had. I knew I was basically not cheap, but I know that they were getting a discount from my work. So I talked to other friends who were doing the job. I knew what they were making. I knew what their bonus structure was like. I knew that I was the only person there and they needed me. So if I threatened to leave, they would have to pay me, or their company the project would go to shit because they wouldn't have someone. So it took me about a week to do all the research. I had the conversation with my boss, who happened to be a woman. I was very nervous about asking for more because I was afraid that I would be told no, but I was also aware of the value that I brought to my job. I knew how much money I was making for them, so the amount of money that I was asking for was absolutely justified. So I had the conversation with her. She emailed me back about 2 hours later to tell me that she talked to her boss and everybody agreed that what I was asking for was justified and I was able to get that raise. To say that I wasn't nervous, I would lie. I was extremely nervous because I was afraid that they wouldn't give it to me. not only that, I was afraid of being stigmatized and perhaps maybe penalized down the road for asking for more money. So maybe when my review came, I wouldn't have gotten my little 3%, or maybe I wouldn't have been able to get promoted because then it would be retaliation for asking for more money. That does happen. But it worked out in my favor, and I got what I was asking for. I asked for $10,000 more a year, and I got it. But I was worth it, and I deserved it. So I apologize not at all for that. They needed to pay me more. But so I would definitely say to anybody who's looking at that, definitely don't feel afraid to ask for what it is you think you're worth. And that's going to look different for each of us, but don't be afraid to ask ever, because if you need to leave, you need to leave, but you got to get what it is you're asking for. So.
Yeah. And every bad deal that you've ever gotten, you agreed to. You know, if you think that you should have made more in a job when you're going in, you said yes to that amount. So you need to just have the capacity to, say no and to be able to go back and tell them what you want. There's a couple good ways to do that. One that really stood out for me was you can pretend to bring someone else into the equation. Like, hey, we're offering this much. Like, I really need to go back and talk to my spouse about that or to my family about that. And that'll give you time to be able to think. Another interesting thing was with women, sometimes we're penalized for being too aggressive. So we have to kind of use excuses like that, even if we know that we don't want that much. But it makes us seem a little bit more friendly, so we're not too aggressive. You also need to pair your competence with altruism, so you kind of have to be nice with it. Men have a little bit more leeway with that, where you can play a little bit more hardball. But some people are not comfortable with that, so thinking and coming up with other techniques in order to work around that is good. But I think the biggest thing was when you get the offer, ask for more. Never accept the first offer. Ever, 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 ever. They're always giving you basically the minimum. Unless this person's super nice and I want to give them 2% more just because. They typically won't do that. So never accept the first offer. Do you have anything else that you want to?
I'm thinking. I think that's pretty much it in terms of what to ask for, how to ask. I'm figuring out your number. Yeah, I think that's it. And then just don't become, those people offering jobs to women less than what you would for men. I mean, that would be the only thing I would say outside of that is, we're in a position where we can change some of those things that get perpetuated throughout the workforce. We're in a position to be better people, so just don't take that opportunity for granted when it comes. I think that's really important to remember too. I would say that's pretty much it.
Clark, did you have a question?
I did. You were saying never take the first offer. Is that when you're being offered the job, we'd like to hire you, this is what we can pay you, or would that be you're going in and saying, I work there, I think I'm worth, I've been here long enough and adding value,
Gotcha. This would be geared more towards that initial, hey, we want to offer you 60. When you're getting the job. That also could tie into the other one, but that's a slightly different situation where you're probably going in to talk to your manager. You've done a lot of research. You know exactly what you want, and you're probably going to ask them, what can you do for me? And then if what they say they can do for you, you're happy with, then awesome. So that, I think, is a little bit more situational. I don't know what you think, Shayla.
I would say that would definitely be regarding the first offer, hey, Clark, I'm going to offer you, $62,000 a year, and you're like, no, and it's okay, and it's okay in that scenario if someone offers you something that you don't want. Well, I really have to talk to my partner about that because I really like your company. However, I also received an offer at 72. So I've really got to speak with my partner and weigh the pros and cons, or I've really got to just speak to them so that I can make the best decision for myself and my family, or just make the best decision for myself. It's okay to say that too. So use whatever out that you need to be able to weigh that. But if someone calls you and offers you that, they're gonna offer you that low point, because like I said, they've got a specific percentage that above that they can go. So if they're offering you 72, a lot of companies can go up to 80.
Okay.
So
So that's normal on their end. They have a range that they can offer.
yes.
They're gonna offer you the bottom.
They're always going to go, because think about it. If you were a company, right, and you would say, well, I could get someone with this skill set, exactly what I'm looking for, but I can get them at $10,000 cheaper than this person over here. Who are you going to take? And most of the time, those people that they're offering that low money to, that are going to take it, are women, because we were not socialized to be negotiators. So, and this applies to people, men, all of us, who just are not comfortable being, now I don't want to say combative, but, dialoguing, bouncing things back and forth. That's a learned skill. That is an absolute learned skill, whether you're a man or a woman. It's a learned skill. So being able to be confident enough and know that your skills are valuable within the workplace. You are valuable as a human and as a worker, and you should be able to get exactly what it is that you're asking for, that you need to be able to take care of yourself. So that's perfectly okay. I remembered one last point too. One thing that Kathleen did mention was, when you're going in, say like for a raise or a review, to be very conscientious about, say, 3 months before said review is happening. Generally, what sticks out in recent memory, things that get documented, things that people are talking about in terms of your work performance, your work ethic, is generally about 3 to 4 months before your actual review happens. So if you know your annual is like in, I don't know, June, then I'd say about May. If there's not May, but I'm saying like, I don't know, February or so. Like if you know that you're late every day or whatever it is, definitely start tightening your shit up before you go into the review, before you have those meetings with your manager, because the last thing you want to do is go and ask for money, but you're doing like shit work, you're a bad team member, horrible morale, etc., etc. You don't want anything to be marked against you, things that are within your scope of control, when asking for money for an increase as well. So make sure that you're mindful of those things as well. I forgot to mention that, but that's mad important.
Yeah. Ooh.
Oh my gosh, his questions.
Start with Calvin.
Not so much a question, but just to reiterate what Liz was saying, I've negotiated my salary several times, and the silence is fucking golden. Like, plan for it. Like, don't say to yourself, like, okay, if it works out that way. Like, seriously make yourself do it, because it's so hard to, like, live with that awkward moment, and the person who's offering you money feels the same thing too. It's a power play, but in the best and simplest and easiest possible way you can think of doing it. Anyway, build it into that conversation. Like, do not forget about it. Like, make sure you do that. Seriously, it gives you way more power than you might think you have, and yeah, it forces them to scramble. So that's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah.
Extremely good.
Tito's like super excited.
I'm just curious, what if the number you have in mind is a lot, like significantly higher than what they offered you? Do you still think like that you should come back with whatever numbers in your mind, or is it worth it?
I would say be realistic about what it is you're asking for. Yeah, we all want to make $100,000, and I think that's fair, because I think every person in here is worth it and deserves it and should get that. But be realistic about what you're asking for, based on what their needs are, what they're asking for, and then where your skill, like the list, right? The skill set, what you're bringing to the table, like make sure it makes sense. So I would say just be realistic, like just to make sure that it makes sense, and then make sure that it makes sense for the company as well, too. Like a new startup or whatever that is, they might not be able to pay that, but weighing it out, okay, do I get to work from home 3 days a week? I may not get what I'm asking for, but I've got the Eco Pass, I've got more vacation. Weigh everything out, but be realistic about what you're asking for. Like, don't just ask for it to ask just because. Be justified, because if you're justified in what you're asking for, you're going to be convinced. Like, don't just throw out a number just to see what happens. So I would definitely advise that.
Yeah, and that's part of like knowing your walkaway point. If you don't want to make less than 80K, that is your walkaway point. If they can only offer you 75, then you're not going to be taking it if that's the max that they can offer you. So that's knowing what you're okay with too, and then kind of if you have to adjust down, is the company worth it? Okay. Or also then trying to get those non-monetary compensation benefits things.
And always leave it open. Well, I'm open to discussion. What were you thinking? What were you thinking about? I've had those conversations as well. Where do you need to be? Where do you need to be able to take this job? And I would ask that specifically for shit that was really hard for me to fill. Where do you need to be? What do I need to ask for to be able to get you here? Is there anything else that I may be able to offer you? Let me have those discussions on your behalf. Let me advocate for you. Because a recruiter or a hiring manager wants to fill the job. They're not your enemy. They want to fill the job. So be open to having those discussions and be vocal about that. I'm willing to talk about this with you. What does that look like? What else is available? So, but definitely be open, but be realistic as well about what you're asking for too. So it goes both ways.
To add on to that, I was speaking to my friend in the industry. He said, like, the only real leverage you have is to have another offer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at the end of the day, if you don't have another offer, then you're not going to be able to, like, leverage that a ton higher.
Yeah.
Most likely.
With the person you're negotiating your salary with?
Yeah, so
you can bump them?
I mean,
You mean like legit?
Like I told Clark, I think, like I was,
don't have this for you,
and I think like I was saying to him, like I would have people all the time on the phone. Oh, you want to offer me 87 to do that? Well, PSL just offered me 90,000 to do that, and you're like, so it hurt, especially coming from a competitor. I mean, a competitor. Oh, I got an offer at the U to do XYZ. Okay, let me have that discussion. I'm on the phone with the manager. The U just offered them 6,000 more. So what do you want me to do? Give it to them. Okay, no problem. I would love to. I would love to offer this person more than the U, what they need, what that number is. It's not my money. That's the thing. It's not their money. I loved spending that hospital's money. I promise you. I loved it. It set my soul on fire. I loved it. So it is, if it's a competitor, you'll figure out, and I think we all will figure out kind of how to play that game pretty quickly, as things start to roll for us, but definitely be realistic about what we're asking for, but don't be afraid to play that game either. Hey, I don't know, Pivotal just offered me 88. See what happens. But I really like your company. I really liked your manager. I really like what you guys make. I really love the location. Everybody on the team seems really cool. It's such a good culture fit for me. I really don't want to not work there. That's convincing. What you want?
My question is directly related to that. Would you recommend, I guess, because when you provided that example with Clark, like I got another offer for 72, I kind of assumed that maybe you didn't actually have another offer. How would you feel about it?
That's nobody's business.
You don't, yeah.
What's real, It's not my job to determine whether or not you're telling the truth. My job is to fill the seat. My job is to get you there, get you working so we can go on with business as usual. Whether or not you're telling the truth, that's, who cares? That doesn't matter. I never checked or verified. I didn't, if someone told me something like you have to immediately get rid of the sense of morality because that will keep you broke. That doesn't matter whether or not
Yeah,
you're
I know.
telling the
I
truth.
guess, for me, I worry about that. Like, I feel like I probably would say that if I didn't have another offer, but I would also worry about them giving me the job and then like 2 weeks later asking me, so who else offered you?
Make some shit up. Why does it matter?
And I believe it is probably an individual thing. I don't know, I'm curious what you think, Liz, if you do it.
Oh, I'm
See,
not
my
moral
concern
enough.
personally would
No,
be
it's
like,
cool. I mean, I think
like,
it's different for everybody.
yeah.
Just messing with you.
I haven't been through it as much, so I was actually curious about your take on this. What if you don't actually have another offer and you're like, this place offered me 72, and they're like, you know what? We can't do that. Like, has it ever gone the route of they're like, never mind, we don't want you?
Well, it doesn't happen that way. If they say, oh, well, it was nice talking to you, the conversation is usually, okay, well, I'm offering you 62. Okay, ooh, that is going to be hard because John Doe Company, they offered me 72. So I'm in a quagmire right now because I really loved your company. I loved everything that you guys, I like what you make. You know, butter them up. I even like you. I like all y'all. I like all y'all. And I don't not want to work for you. What can we do? What can we do? Turn it into something, well, we've got to solve this problem together because we're in a quagmire. You want me to come work for you? I want to come work for you, but I've got this sneaky little mistress coming in my ear offering me more money, and I'm trying to marry you.
And that's kind of where you're solving a problem together, I guess. So you're working in collaboration with this person. So I don't know if I have the audacity to say like, hey, Pivotal offered me 95.
You can make up a company. I don't think it's as important to be honest as it is to get exactly what it is that you're after, because the person on the phone isn't approaching you initially honest with the maximum amount of money that they can offer you. So if they come back to you in 2 weeks, oh, who offered you a job? Make up the hospital. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who offered it to you. It's about you getting what it is you deserve. You offered it to yourself because that's what you said you wanted and that you were worth to do this particular job.
I'd say if you jump up too much though, like if they offered you 62 and you're like, oh, another company offered me like 88 or something, like it would be stupid for you to take the 62. You know what I mean? At a certain point, they would be like, okay, well, and then you get called out on your bluff. You know? So
Well,
it's like
sometimes
finding that zone.
sometimes it happens, but the only way you're going to get called on your bluff is if you call yourself on your bluff. You know, only you can reveal your tell. They don't know. They don't know. Because think about it, like the market's hot, right? Everybody's hot. So what's happening doesn't matter. It's not like they're looking for, I don't know, some really, really strange, rare job, you know, someone who looks exactly like a bird that codes Java. Well, there's one person in Denver, right, that does that. So we know there's only one person that does that. Only you can tell on yourself. Who or what is offering you something else, even if it's not true, is not as important as you getting what it is that you want. If you are offered 62 and you jump up to 88 and they're like, well, damn, I don't even know. Well, what can you do? What can you do? I really want to work for you. You have to be in control of that conversation, because the minute that you do lose control of that conversation, then it's going to be like, well, damn, I just wasted my time. You wasted our time. We wasted your, like, nothing happens. You don't follow it through.
Possibly part of that is also just like what you said about being smart about what you're asking for. You know, if you're asking a company
Right. And if you're checking the range too,
Yeah.
so
You
if
guys
it,
wanna put your hands down with me.
so if you're checking a range and it says, okay, this job's gonna pay 60 to 80, that's a $20,000 range.
But also, like, you don't go in and ask for about 100 then.
Right. But since you see that range, you can go as close to that edge as possible. They've already built in, they're already prepared to pay somebody 80 or whatever that is. So why not go as high as you can? Why not? Tito,
Like, you-
and then it was
you guys-
Tito and then Mike, because Tito.
Mine is really quick. I just wanted to add on to like Amy's question. You don't even have to disclose who the company is. Like, you can just throw a number out there, not to talk about this.
You could say, I don't want to.
Business, like,
I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable disclosing that information.
Mm-mm.
I was thinking also, like as far as not doing companies, just be like, well, I've done my research and I've seen that like comparable positions or at like
Mm-hmm.
such company they offer more like this rather than just be like, oh, yeah, I got offered this job.
And
Be
that's
like, I think that's what I'm wearing.
and that's fair too. You know, to say, well, I've been looking and it seems like da da da. That's fair too because you're still in control of the conversation and you're still advocating for yourself, and you're the only person that's going to be advocating for yourself. The recruiter, the hiring manager on the phone, they're not going to be advocating for you. They're advocating for the company, their own interests, not yours. Only you can do that. But don't be afraid to make them spend their money either. Just saying. I love spending other people's money.
It's not really much of a question, it's more of it's just like something that I've kind of observed. Dave and I talked about it this morning. Three of us actually kind of touched on it a little bit upstairs.
Mhm.
And I think it's like there's like a mental construct that's all in our heads. It's just kind of like, oh, this company's doing me a favor. And that is not the case. That has to be removed out of your head.
Yeah.
It is an exchange of services. They are paying you for your service. So it's really hard for them to be like, well, they did me this favor and they hired me. And it's like, no, that was not a favor at all. And I think it's like really hard for us. It's like whenever you think that there's somebody's doing you a favor for you, you just have some natural need to reciprocate something back towards them at the same time. So it's just like you gotta be very gentle with that and make sure that you're not stepping on your own toes with that.
And that's perfect because that's one of the reasons why we just take whatever, because we do feel like, oh, we're getting a great favor done for us by being offered a job. So we just take it. Perfect. I love that. They're not doing you a favor.
Kind of to that point, another thing that people tend to have questions on is start date. You can ask for like 2 weeks in between jobs. You can say, you know, like, hey, I was actually hoping my start date would be, and then say 2 weeks out, because these people want you. They've offered you the position. They've already dedicated so much time to go through all the interviews and stuff. They want you. So if you say, oh, I was actually hoping for like a week later and list the date, that's okay. Any company that's going to be worth their salt that you probably would actually want to work for would be willing to wait a week or two for you.
And it's a sign of respect as well. It's always a red flag if someone says, oh, no, I'm just going to leave. I don't have to give notice. That's a big red flag to a company hiring. It's always very respectful for the 2 weeks. Always give 2 weeks. It shows you give a shit, and you'll be more respected for it. So always give 2 weeks.
Anyone eager for practice, you can always go to the flea market. It's just like a third rule, where whatever they say the price is, on a third of that, and then usually you negotiate up to either 50% or 2/3 of that, and like that's the mini range. Like anyway, it's a good way to get the feel for the banter because it's something cheap. You know, everything's fucking cheap there. Flea markets are a great place to learn haggle.
I love that. Jake, you had your...
I just wanted to reiterate Mike's point. Like, we expect companies to lowball us and try and screw us, but then we get really scared at the concept of trying to eyeball that back. So, yeah, take that into consideration. Don't let your mindset get skewed that way.
I think Clark's had his hand
And
up for a
then
bit.
Cole.
I was just wondering if there's like, is there a limit? Like, is there a situation where you take under your, what was the?
Your walkaway point?
Yeah, your walkaway point. Like, I guess I'm asking because of a specific situation. Like, I've kind of been offered a job that pays very little, good resume builder, and it's like it has some good things about it, and I'll learn a lot. But like I probably won't be able to pay my bills without help. It'd be enough for me to live off of it.
Yeah.
But so I'm wondering, like, like what are the dynamics of this? Like, is there a good case for that? Like when we're starting out, especially.
Well, only you can know what your walking away point is. So you need to do some reflection on what you're willing to live with. If you can't pay your bills, it's probably an issue, and that maybe try to get something else out of it. But at that point, it does sound like it is a monetary issue. But do the benefits of that outweigh that part of it? Because if that's going to happen, you're probably going to have some sort of another job in order to pay your bills. So that's where you have to balance and figure out what truly is your walk away. And if that does fall below because you can't pay your bills, then that sucks. But if it sucks that much, then maybe you do. I don't know.
It's going to be up to you to determine what the value is for you.
I was gonna say too, like if anything, I would honestly say like try to set up some marker points and just be like, once I hit that mark, like pay's gotta go up. So that way you're getting your experience, you're getting a little bit of money, and then you're not actually just selling yourself entirely to this company. You're actually drawing a line and you're making a line with something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or if you're working it and then you're looking for something else while you're doing that, because you can put it on your resume, but you're still looking for something else that will pay you more. You just have to determine what it is that you want to do with that. You've got to, only you can say what that is going to look like for you. But I would always say write a list of the pros and cons. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's one of those things that has proven to be a really helpful tool for me with a couple of different scenarios. Just make 2 columns, pros and cons. And if your pros outweigh your cons, then you've kind of got your decision, right? But if the opposite happens, then maybe you need to do something else. But only you can determine what that's going to be like. Like, I don't want to tell you don't do it, but it's something that you might enjoy and might feed you. Maybe not feed you, but feed, the geek. Yeah.
And if there is a company that they're like, hey, in like 3 months, you can move into this kind of a role.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, try to get it in writing, because I have worked in HR and seen a lot of times when people are like, I was told in 3 months I'd be in a lead payroll position. It's like, did you get that in writing? No? Then that was not part of this deal. I didn't say that to people.
You will get.
But yeah, so if there is that kind of path that is possible, get that in writing and get that signed.
And ask those questions. What does this look like 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road? So then you can determine whether or not it's worth your time. And be vocal. In 6 months, I want to do XYZ, or I want to be XYZ. If they're waiting for a round of funding or whatever those things are, have that conversation. Are you guys willing to pay me in equity? What does that look like? Don't be afraid to have those conversations, because at the end of the day, you do need to eat. So, go for it, Deez. I believe in you. Yay!
You may have covered this when I was out of the room, but like, let's say your walkaway point's like $70,000. They offer you 72. And they're like, we really like you. This is what we pay our junior web developers, but you would like to get up to like, I don't know, 77 or something like that, 78. But you don't have another job offer.
Say that.
What do you have, like, how would you phrase, what are you just like, I'm worth that, but don't you have to back that up with some sort of rationale?
Well, I don't know if you're here for this part. When you receive the offer, you pause and you say, that's not where I was hoping to end up.
Okay.
Then they're like, where did you end up or want to end up? And then you say, well, my goal is 80. And then they maybe come back with something else too. And you could, and at that point you're probably like, because I'm awesome at this, I'm awesome at that, and I really want to work for your company, I'm super passionate. No.
Stop talking.
That's where you stop talking. They know all that stuff. And if then there's more back and forth, that's where you could list like, well, you could maybe start listing some of those attributes. But first, say that's not where I was hoping to end up. Make it
That's
awkward.
what Calvin was talking about.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Make it awkward. Pause. Wait. Let them stew a little bit,
Okay,
and let them come back with, where did you want to? Or, well, how about we could do 75, and then you're like, that's still a little low for what I was wanting. Okay, where did you want to? So pause.
Yeah. Any other questions? Hmm.
Awesome.